Hey there, what's up, everybody? It's Dr. Shazetta. I hope you guys are doing well. If you celebrate the 4th of July, happy Independence Day to you, or happy 4th of July to you. My family and I aren't gigantic celebrators of the holiday for a number of reasons, but at any rate, I hope that you are enjoying the day. I hope that you're finding something restorative to do, or perhaps spending some time with your family. But listen, I wanted to just come on and encourage you to set big goals and do hard things. Why am I saying that? I'm at the place in the year where my husband and I are sitting down and really saying, okay, this is what we've accomplished up until this point in the year. Now, as we have come or entered into the second half of 2025, what are the big things that we want to accomplish, or what are some things that we want to check off of our list by the end of the calendar year 2025? And it's been really really humbling, but it's also been a time of celebration for us. I haven't really stopped to share, right, the fullness of our story over time, right, particularly this last 4 or 5 years that we've really hit some rock bottom places, but watching that progress really since 2020 up until now has really been something powerful to behold. For those of you who are close to us, you may know, and some of you just may not, but in January 2020, my husband and I came to the decision that we needed to file bankruptcy. And it was a hard decision to make, but we had been kind of underwater in debt, some for just poor management, but other things, we just didn't have the income coming in, raising 2 kids at the time, and it just wasn't, we couldn't see our way out of it. How are we going to get out from under this mountain of debt? We couldn't see our way through it, and there wasn't a great deal of didn't seem like there was a great deal of possibility in terms of generating enough income to cover our living expenses and to be able to pay the debt down. Now, we weren't people who didn't pay our bills, so we were making payments every single month, but we were at a place where we just couldn't see our way through being able to pay all of our debt off, right? We were just really paying interest by the time it was said and done. And so we made the decision to file bankruptcy, and we let one of our vehicles go. Probably should have let them both go in the bankruptcy, but we were living in a place where public transit wasn't really a feasible thing for us to be able to make it to work and get our kids to where they needed to get. So all of that. We moved to DC in 2021. So we came through the pandemic, right, navigating bankruptcy. And the truth be told, because of the way the pandemic landed, if we hadn't filed bankruptcy, we definitely probably would have been even further under, because of the limits in income that came as a result of the pandemic. So we filed bankruptcy again in January 2020, before pandemic hit, or before we knew what it was. And it ended up being, right, a good decision, or the best decision for our family, for good or for bad now, but it was a decision we felt we had to make at the time. And things got really hard for a while, right? In 2021, we moved to Washington, D.C. because we both knew that we needed a break, a sabbatical from the work that we were doing, but we also needed to make sure that we could keep a roof over our heads. And so was offered a position, a volunteer position at a university here at Georgetown, as resident ministers, that allowed for our housing expenses to be covered. And so we didn't really have a strong income coming in, but we had enough kind of side hustle, part-time contract work to help us make sure that we could pay the bills that we brought with us and keep a few dollars in the refrigerator as well. And so we did that. We came here. It was still really, really tight, right? Just barely, barely being able to take care of what we need to take care of. Sometimes having to make value judgments around, are we paying something right now? Are we putting food in the refrigerator? Or are we paying, right, this car note? And so we ended up making the decision to have a conversation with the local car dealer, who made an offer on the car that we still had. We sold the car at a loss, and then borrowed some money from a family member to allow us to pay off the rest of it. And we went without a car, right, for 2 years. So we did did hard things in that moment, but it was because we had and have the ultimate goal of not only being debt free, but also being financially stable, financially solvent, and able to be a blessing to other people, and also to build right generational wealth for our family. And so, you know, we were able to do that. And since that time, 2020 now to 2025, we're now at a place where we have consistent income coming into our household. In 2023, I received a job offer that required me to have a vehicle, though, and so we were freaking out because we still had, you know, a 2.5 year old bankruptcy, or 3 year old bankruptcy, right? And so getting approved for a car loan, chances felt like they probably would be slim, and so we applied though. And we were able to get approved for a used vehicle. Had a high interest rate, 13%, but the fact that we got approved for it, and we knew from the get-go that we wanted to pay it off early. And the job offer, you know, if we played our cards right, and if we use wisdom and discipline right, that we should be able to do it. And so we didn't know how soon we were going to be able to pay it off, or how early we were going to be able to pay it off, but we kept trusting. At the beginning of this year, you know, continue to work hard, continue to pay debt down. At the beginning of this year, I heard very clearly in my soul and my spirit, you all can pay this car off. You all will pay this car off by July. And so that became, right, our mindset, the big goal that we were setting. Now, numerically, it was going to be tight, but the hard thing, it was a big goal, but the hard thing was going to be the really, really, really pressing toward it, the really, really, you know, disciplining ourselves, the making money in other ways, taking in some extra work, contract work, etc. And so we set, right, our minds to do that, but also in February or March, I started knowing that it was time for me to walk away from one of the jobs that I was doing, like completely. Just because it was beginning to be too much to carry physically, mentally, emotionally, and also that I believe that seasons change, and when seasons change, we have to change with them. And so I was clear that my season at that particular place had come to an end, and in my mind, I was like, but if I can just press through till July, right, July or August, you know, then we can pay this car off or whatever. But I didn't have it in me. I was also navigating an intense season of grief, and so I knew that I needed to take everything that was not absolutely necessary off my plate. And I believed I knew, right, what I was hearing God say. And I heard God releasing me from that particular job. And so I submitted a letter of resignation, I think effective March or April 15th of this year. And I was like, man, you know, so what does that mean for this car payoff? But I knew what I'd heard God say in January about us paying this car off in July. And so, you know, I submitted that letter of resignation, still with the big goal in mind, still willing to do hard things, but not having a clear idea at that point of what the hard things actually were in the moment that were going to get us to the achieving of that large goal. And as I'm walking away from that job, an opportunity came for me to do an additional 3 or 4 weeks of work, working on one grant application, and essentially the honorarium, my fee for doing it was exactly the amount that we needed to pay off the car. And I'm not talking about $1,000 or $2,000, right? Our car was not slated to be paid off until the end of either 2027 or the middle of 2028. But by June 15th, right, we were able to call and make the final payment, or make a big lump sum payoff on that car because that project came and they paid me in a lump sum amount. It was hard, right, for us in the sacrifices that we've made over the last few years, and certainly the last several months as we've been plowing through toward achieving that July 1 date. But it was a big goal. You know, sometimes I think that we have big ideas and we have big goals, but we only allow ourselves to believe that those things are possible for a few moments before we talk ourselves out of it because of everything going on around us, right? Because of what seems realistic. I mean, even with the, this foolishness of, what they call the big, beautiful bill, that was passed on yesterday or the day before, there are a lot of folks who are already in a state of panic. A lot of folks who have written off the possibility of their achieving their dreams. And I just think that this particular season is not the season to shrink back from your goals and your ideas and your dreams. It's not the season to go into a place of panic, but it's a season to press in, to set big goals, but also to be willing to do hard things. I believe that God is literally able, right? And this is scriptural, right? But that God is able to exceed our highest expectations, right? Scripture says to do exceedingly and abundantly above what we can ask, but also beyond what we can think. And so if we are able to think something that is so large, right? And set that thing as a goal, then scripture tells us that God is able to exceed even that. So if I'm able to think of something that I know is outside of my natural reach and ability to achieve on my own, then automatically that tells me that it's not so large that God can't achieve it or help me to achieve it, God's own self. And so I want to encourage you today to just sit and to think about, right, what is your wildest dream? What is your biggest dream? If you could do one gigantic thing or accomplish one gigantic thing or 5 or 10, what would those things be, or what would that thing be? And then to figure out then what, God, are the hard things I need to do, that I need to commit to doing in order to make sure that I've positioned myself to channel then the power and the authority that you give me to achieve this thing. We paid off the car, 3 years early, or 2.5 years early. And it would be easy to say, okay, that was the big goal for the year. All is well. But nah, we replaced that big goal with another big goal. As we're sitting talking today, I've actually got 3 very large ones that I want to articulate now. 2 are for, one is for the end of this calendar year, between now and December 31, 2025. And then there are 2 for 2026, one by June 2026 and the other before November or December 2026, really by October is my hope, of 2026. But there are 3 pretty enormous goals, if I'm being honest about it. 3 very large goals, but also there are 3 very large goals that, with like consistent hard work on my part and on my husband's part, that we can, I really feel like we can reach in and grab them. Dreaming big and setting big goals really, I think, is a major exercise in faith, right? My pastor says all the time, I don't ask God for stuff that I can achieve on my own, right? I don't ask God to, help me with help me lose weight if I know that my weight loss has to do with, my lack of movement and my not eating well. I don't ask God to help me with my finances, especially if the where I am financially can be immediately remedied by a change of my habits and actions. Right now, there are some times when our health issues are beyond our control. There are many times when our financial issues are beyond our control. And so rather than trying to press in and fix it all ourselves, those are times when we need to call on, right, the power and authority and strength and miracle working power of God. And then there are other times when it's just a matter of discipline. So, for me, one of these goals, I'm not asking God, I'm asking God for discipline and wisdom and strategy for us with regard to our finances, right? Because I believe that God has positioned us in a place where if we have strategy and if we are creative and if we exercise wisdom and discipline, that the sky is the limit for us. And so it is what my husband and I have been talking about this last, few days, is really a willingness to do the hard work, right? What does it mean to do a no spend quarter or a no spend month or no spend year? What does it mean to trim down our expenditures to necessities, not as a means of suffering, not because we are quote unquote poor, but because we have some big goals, right, that we're trying to achieve that require from us to do hard things. I had a pastor once that would say, when we do our natural part, then God puts God's super with it, and then we end up with a supernatural result. And so today, my encouragement to you, even as you're sitting on, on this July 4th weekend, if you're celebrating, maybe you had a cookout, maybe you cooking out yourself, we chose to take today as a planning day, as a day to be restorative for us, as a day to read, as a day to think through how we are resetting, to think through how we are chasing after what we call true freedom, true independence, true liberty, in terms of business and finance. That is our way, right, of making sure the Independence Day is not just a calendar event that is celebrated historically, all the political things, but we're choosing to take this day off to really hone in on setting big goals and recommitting and committing to doing hard things. And so I want to encourage you today. I want to ask you today, how are you planning for your own freedom? What does true freedom even look like for you? How are you planning for your independence and the independence of your children, and creating generational freedom and generational wealth, or generational freedom through generational wealth, right? And so I want to say to you, right, that, and for me, it's not a flex, right? 5 years, when you say it, can seem like a long time, but when you're living it, it's not as long as it seems. Time has flown. I can look back literally and remember, and sometimes feel the tension of what it felt like to not know where your next was coming from, or where our next was coming from. And looking and knowing that we have the skill sets and we have the abilities and the student loans, right, to show that we have tools, right, in our toolboxes that can help right or remedy some of the circumstances that we found ourselves in. And so I want you to look internally, right? I don't want you to focus on what you don't have. I want you to focus on what you do have. And I want you to set at least one big goal for yourself, and then commit to the hard things that you're willing to do to ensure that you are doing everything that you can do to get you to that goal. And whatever you can't do, trusting then that God will do God's part, right? If I'm doing everything that I know to do and everything that I'm capable of doing in terms of my health, in terms of my finances, in terms of my marriage, in terms of my job and relationships, if I'm literally doing everything that I can do, I'm doing my best, I'm offering my reasonable service, then I have every expectation to call God on the carpet and say, God, now I've done my part. I've done everything I know to do. Now I need you, right, to come and match this energy, match this effort, and do what only you can do, right? So at any rate, I just wanted to come and share that with you all today. We paid off our car 3 years early, 2.5, 3 years early, and we did it by setting a big goal, which seemed impossible on many planes. And then we committed to doing hard things. And so I want to encourage you to do that today. Listen, if this blessed you at all, if it's of any interest to you, I hope that you will hit the like and subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers, and then my next goal will be 1,000 as I seek to build this kind of YouTube community. So I hope that you all will join me here. Hit that notification bell. That way, whenever I upload a new content. In the meantime, down in the comments, if you are setting a big goal, if you are doing some hard things, I'm all ears and would love to hear it and be an encouragement for you. At any rate, y'all be safe this weekend. If you're out and about, if you're just chilling, whatever you do, take good care of yourself, and always remember that we are endeavoring to live the well life, being whole in every area, nothing broken, nothing missing. I love y'all. Take good care now.